The story of American pop culture is one of constant reinvention. From the early days of silent films and jazz to today's TikTok challenges and streaming giants, American pop culture has continuously shaped and been shaped by society. This video is a deep dive into how music, movies, TV shows, and technology have transformed how Americans live, dream, and entertain themselves. The 20th century ushered in a new era of entertainment in America. It was the dawn of mass media. Television was still decades away, and the internet was a dream on the horizon, but people were hungry for stories and music. As the 1900s progressed, Hollywood was born. Charlie Chaplin, Mary Pickford, and Douglas Fairbanks became the first international film stars. Their films became a global phenomenon, and Hollywood's dream factory was set into motion. The soundtrack of a new age. In the 1920s, a new music genre emerged: jazz. Artists like Louis Armstrong and Duke Ellington brought the sound of improvisation and freedom to life, making jazz the soundtrack of the Roaring Twenties. Its influence was far-reaching, affecting not just music but dance and fashion as well. The rise of the studio system. By the 1930s, Hollywood had solidified its place at the heart of American culture. Studios like MGM, Warner Brothers, and Paramount ruled the industry, pumping out film after film. Actors like Clark Gable, Judy Garland, and Humphrey Bogart became household names, and the golden age of Hollywood had arrived. During the Great Depression and World War II, the American public turned to film to escape the harsh realities of the world. Films like The Wizard and offered fantastical, larger-than-play experiences that lifted spirits during hard times. While movies were all the rage, radio started to spread across the country, bringing entertainment into living rooms. By the late 1940s, TV began to take hold, with shows like becoming cultural staples. In the 1950s, a new generation was coming of age: the baby boomers. This era marked the rise of youth culture and a new era of music that would change everything. The 1950s were defined by rock and roll, and Elvis Presley was its king. His blend of rhythm and blues with country music revolutionized the sound of the time and inspired an entire generation. Teenagers were now a distinct cultural force, and Elvis became their symbol of rebellion. The rise of television brought new stars into American homes. Shows like Uptown reflected the ideals of the time, while music shows like showcased the latest rock and roll acts. Hollywood began focusing more on the emerging youth market, producing films like Starring James Dean, which captured the angst and restlessness of the new teen generation. The 1960s were a time of tremendous social upheaval. Civil rights, feminism, and the Vietnam War became central issues in American life, and pop culture reflected the intense cultural clashes happening across the country. The 1960s saw the British invasion, with bands like the Beatles and the Rolling Stones changing the landscape of music forever. The Beatles, in particular, became more than just a band. They became a cultural movement, influencing everything from fashion to politics to spirituality. Music became an outlet for political expression. Songs like Bob Dylan's and Sam Cooke's became anthems for the civil rights movement. Artists used their platforms to speak out against racial injustice and inequality. The counterculture movement took root in the late 60s, leading to the iconic Woodstock Festival in 1969. It was a celebration of peace, love, and music, an event that captured the hopes and dreams of a generation seeking change. The 1980s was a decade defined by excess. Big hair, neon clothes, MTV, and the rise of consumerism. It was the era of the material girl, the high-flying yuppie, and the dawn of the digital age. When MTV launched in 1981, it completely changed the way music was consumed. Artists like Michael Jackson, Madonna, and Prince became larger-than-play figures, and music videos became an art form in themselves. Became the best-sellered album of all time, and videos like defined an era. Madonna, Michael Jackson, and Prince were the biggest pop icons of the 80s. Madonna's reinvention of herself, Michael Jackson's moonwalk, and Prince's groundbreaking fusion of pop, rock, and funk dominated the pop culture scene. The 1980s also marked the beginning of the video game revolution. Consoles like the Nintendo Entertainment System, NES, and Sega Genesis became household staples. This era also saw the rise of personal computers, shaping the future of entertainment. The 90s was a decade that blended music, television, and the internet in ways never before imagined. With the rise of the internet, an entirely new world of pop culture began to emerge. The 1990s saw the explosion of hip-hop as a dominant force in American culture. Artists like Tupac Shakur, the Notorious B.I.G., and Dr. Dre created a new genre that merged music with activism and storytelling. Hip-hop became not just a genre but a cultural movement. At the same time, the grunge movement, led by bands like Nirvana and Pearl Jam, provided a counterpoint to the glossy commercial music of the 80s. Grunge embraced angst, authenticity, and rebellion, becoming the soundtrack for Generation X. The rise of the internet in the 1990s changed the way people consumed pop culture. Websites like AOL, Yahoo, and early social media platforms like MySpace began to shape how people interacted with music, movies, and each other. The 1990s were a golden age of television, with shows like dominating the airwaves. These shows not only entertained, but shaped the cultural landscape for a new generation. The 2000s and 2010s marked the shift from traditional media to the digital age. Streaming services, social media, and viral content became the new platforms for pop culture to thrive. Reality television exploded in the early 2000s with shows like Changing the Landscape of Television. The Kardashian family, in particular, became global icons, turning social media and personal branding into a business. Netflix, Hulu, and YouTube became the dominant sources for entertainment. The way people watched TV and movies changed forever. Shows like Shai-Chi and Shashai became global sensations. Platforms like Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok gave rise to influencers and viral trends. Pop culture was no longer confined to TV screens and radio. It was now part of an interactive, global conversation. And that's just a snapshot of the evolution of American pop culture. From silent films and jazz to the rise of social media influencers, pop culture has been and will continue to be a mirror of American society. Every decade has brought its own new trends, sounds, and innovations, and we are constantly looking forward to what's next. What will the future of American pop culture hold? Only time will tell. Thanks for watching this video. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon to stay tuned for more information.